I was just going to explain this in public.
You would add it to the agenda when I request it.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing.
What do we want to do about?
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to bring it up tonight. Were you still intending to do that?
Under city manager comments and just say, hey, here's the situation that we have.
I mean, if you want me to sort of state our position as currently, the state law changed in 2021
I thought you were going to see us at the South Canton Park
expand
meeting.
the definition of,
I didn't see you. I was here, but I don't
Oh,
know where
then
you were.
left
and it's anybody who rents a room.
Yes, well, you weren't here the whole time.
again? Is that almost?
Yeah, I came in, got the skinny from Scott, changed the whole layout.
If you want to allow them, tell us.
It seemed pretty cool. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, how are
Just say
you?
right, as of right now,
Yeah,
we
I'm just peachy. Everything.
allow it. And if you want to allow it, we can look at
Oh,
it.
yeah?
Unless I'm into
Yeah, we just never got any restrictions
about what they do. I cannot. Computer would not act up. But I have candy. I have chocolate.
Do you want more?
No, thank you. Yes.
So, I mean, right now, under my theory, if it's a hotel, that's allowed in the central business district.
Where's this bill? Is that Jasper?
Right. And if it's in the central business
It's just
district.
here. I don't know. It's just here.
Right.
Kind of like it.
That's what I think. I
So
mean,
he's
if
not
you're
flat, not
subleasing for a long
round.
term,
That's correct.
for the whole thing, or even a room in the basement. Because it sort of comes up to why aren't we charging
Brooke,
Hard to say.
additional tax?
you know where this is from?
So,
Freaking house
Really,
full of
nothing.
cats today.
it exempts real estate from
Don't start
occupational tax.
that chats because I am on my last nerve. And you just don't want to go there.
They were everywhere.
I believe you've been threatened by Rock City, Pennsylvania.
Is Chief here?
Go get my cats and sit them on there.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Would you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? Remain standing in the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Wilson?
Would you bow for prayer? Gracious God, thank you for this new day you've created. Grant us wisdom and courage to live in it in light of your acts of love and kindness. We're prone to follow our ways and not your ways. We prefer our wisdom to your wisdom. We want to be in charge of your creation. We ask tonight that you mold us and make us again in the image of the living Christ, that our words and deeds might be the words and deeds of Jesus. We pray for the sick and suffering, the lost and forgotten. Help each of us to do what we're meant to be, living and loving as your people. And all this we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I'd like to call to order our April 20th, 2023 council meeting. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I know it's a little warm in here. We'll be discussing that topic later in the agenda. Just know that it's warm out there. It's about 20 degrees warmer up here on the dais with these lights. So bear with us. We have a kind of lengthy agenda tonight. A lot of housekeeping items when you have a council and staff that is planning their work and working their plan. That tends to happen. So thanks to everyone for the good work. So we'll begin tonight with a consideration to approve tonight's agenda. Do we have any changes or revisions to consider?
Mr. Mayor, I need to request to add an executive session for real estate and litigation,
Okay.
and would also request the removal of item 10C, a discussion discussion and possible change order to Strack, as staff does some further evaluation of that item.
Okay.
Mayor, I also would like to ask that we add an item to the agenda.
Okay.
It would be discussion and possible action on a settlement agreement in the lawsuit between Holly Dowdy and Sonia Dowdy in the city of Canton.
We would do that in our old business or new business?
I think it's actually old business because I think we've discussed it before.
Yes, that's what I. So I'll just add discussion and possible action on settlement, and I'll let you repeat all that again, Mr. Dyer, when we get there. So, okay, so we have 3 revisions that I've noted. Any additional ones?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
A motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. We have a couple of visitors, guests tonight with presentations, and we'll begin with item A, South Canton Park Project Update. We have Adam Williamson and Kristen Koneman from TSW.
Hello, it's just Adam tonight. I'm Adam Williamson with
Hi, Adam.
TSW. We're planning architecture and landscape architecture firm. I'll step up over here.
So you made me pronounce that other name, and she's not even here.
We call her KK.
Okay, good. Good to know. I'll note that for future presentations, so thank you.
But like I said, we do planning, landscape architecture, and we've been working on the project here. So when we started the project, this is the location off of Ivy Drive. Obviously, there's a lot of tree canopy. That sticks out as an important aspect we wanted to keep. Sustainability is important. We'll talk about some of those components. It also had steep topography and has the existing house on it. And some of the elements that were talked about early on was a dog park, community events, I mentioned sustainable design, and locating a water tower, and then some on-site parking. So we started out by just looking at inspiration of other parks and projects, things such as sustainable stormwater and gathering place. And I won't read all of these, but you see some of the elements that we started thinking about. And then we developed a master plan, and these are some of the elements in the master plan. You can see the parking that's close to the front of the site. It also includes a restroom building. It has dog park, which was mentioned early on. It has natural green space, and then it has some art, playable art, and also just art in the park. And then we have a canopy walk. And so we have a lot of passive elements proposed around the park, and keeping as many trees as we can. A lot of these elements won't require a lot of grading. We have some bioswales to catch the storm water. We also have, you can see in the top left there, a cistern to catch rainwater off the restroom facility and use that for irrigation. And so we try to, again, use a lot of these sustainable aspects throughout the park. And these are just some of the images to show the interpretive signage. So if you're doing that sustainability, to tell a story about it, to educate kids and others. And then you can see the Artful Kids Play. We even talked about a ropes course for older kids, a bandstand, and a food truck area where the community could come and have break bread together. And then also the dog park, which includes the little dog park and the large dog park, because they don't like to mix sometimes. Earlier today, we had a good turnout. We probably had 30 to 40 people come and give us their feedback. It was mostly positive. A lot of people were very excited. There were a few concerns was traffic. I'm sure you've heard that before, specifically on Ivy Road, and then some suggestions about buffering the property. But overall, it was very positive, and we'll type a list up of those comments and give those to you guys. So we had a brief presentation, so I'd like to open it up for any questions. I know you have a long agenda.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. We're certainly very excited to be discussing the first park in South Canton and the dog park, which our citizens ranked in the top 3 priorities for the roadmap when we developed that originally. I know we've all been getting a lot of positive comments, and I want to thank all the citizens who came out this afternoon and gave their feedback and input into the conceptual plans and developments. So, any questions at the moment? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're very excited about this. We have item B, Riverstone Parkway pedestrian crossing presentation. Jimmy Adams and John Badrao with Atkins.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jimmy Adams. I'm a transportation planner for Atkins. As you know, we did a traffic engineering report, TE study is what we call it, on how to safely cross Riverstone Parkway. And we have received a couple of comments from Georgia DOT, and they were very minor in nature. We recommended a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is pretty much like a traffic signal for pedestrians. I think right now they're concerned with the number of pedestrians and the location of that we proposed. But the TE study is necessary because it's a state route for permitting purposes, and it's part of Georgia DOT's plan development process. So you got the location map? So our study was from Waleska Street to Hospital Drive, and what we found out when we studied this is we did look at speeds on the roadway, and we picked, I think it was a Tuesday in last September, that we looked at the speeds, and they're primarily 35 miles per hour. We don't have much speeding going on. Only like 2%, 2.5% was over 40 miles an hour. The travel lanes that the pedestrians have to cross, they have to cross 2 travel lanes in each direction with a center left turn lane. There are a good many vehicles on the road. There's over 20,000 vehicles per day. It means it's a major commuter route. And for someone to safely cross now, they've either got to go down to the traffic signal at Waleska Street or go up to the one at Juniper. You had the pedestrian crash. The next one, I have to show you that. Did I give one with the pedestrian crashes? May have skipped. I may not have seen it, but there's pedestrian crashes that we did study. We looked from 2013 to the present. Most of the pedestrian crashes that occurred were east of the entrance into Ingalls, the main entrance, and all of the pedestrian crashes occurred in the center left turn lane. They're using the center left turn lane as like a refuge, a place of refuge to cross. And one was a fatality, and 3 others were injuries. For the pedestrian crossing location that we're choosing, is right there at the Ingalls. They provided a crosswalk up to the sidewalk, and it's about halfway between Waleska Street and Hospital Drive is where we studied, and that's the location that we'll be proposing to place a pedestrian hybrid beacon. Now, typically pedestrian or any kind of signal is usually warranted. Since this is a pedestrian signal, we used a manual of uniform traffic control devices to do our warrants with, and they usually suggest 20 pedestrians per hour. We counted pedestrians from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening, and we only got 19 all day long. So they really didn't warrant pedestrian signal based on the guidelines. So I think I have one of the slide of the FHWA guidelines. So we turn to this, and this is based on the roadway type and the speeds. And we chose the 4-lane roadway with center left turn lane, no raised median, 35 miles per hour. And the recommendations that they recommend is a high visibility crosswalk with adequate lighting, a stop here for a pedestrian sign, a pedestrian refuge island in the middle of the roadway, and a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is essentially, like I said before, it's like a traffic signal when activated by the pedestrian. So at this time, the next steps would be to design the PHB, get GDOT approval, and then secure a contractor. So questions.
Are you state so on this roadway configuration, so you're basing the recommendation on that versus the pedestrian crossings? Are you saying that it would warrant it based on that? Or are you still,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
so you're saying that GDOT would require 20 pedestrians crossings an hour to?
Typically, that's the guideline they use for pedestrian crossings. That wasn't met, so what we did was
Went
looked
to
at
the secondary.
FHWA. We did like another method.
So the other method, we do meet the threshold, would meet the threshold, correct?
Based on the roadway type, yeah,
Okay.
roadway type. And I think given that and the number of collisions, pedestrian collisions that have occurred, you know, that's a countermeasure that needs to be taken. Something needs to be done to prevent car
Correct. And
accidents.
pedestrian crossings are one thing to measure, but deaths and collisions are certainly more important in my mind. So, okay. Great. Other questions? Ms. Wilson?
Thanks. I understand there's not enough traffic for a stoplight. There's not enough for a pedestrian light. So the bottom line is that you're going to put in a pedestrian walk.
It would be a crosswalk is what we
Crosswalk.
recommended.
Now, what will that be? Will it just be something across the road? Tell me a little bit about how that's going to look and how that's going to help.
It'll
I know
look
you probably did, but I was thinking ahead.
look like a mast arm with a signal
Okay.
overhead, and when a pedestrian, it won't be active when there's no pedestrians. So
Right.
if you've got 19 a day, it won't be pushed that much. But when a pedestrian does come up and activates it,
Okay.
that light will turn red and it'll
Okay.
stop traffic.
Oh, so there will be a pedestrian light.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It'll hang over Riverstone
Yeah.
Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think we've installed some on Beaufort Highway. If you want to do like a Google, Beaufort Highway,
Okay.
there's some on that road, so you can look there, which is a similar type of roadway.
Ms. Watson?
If I may, sorry. I just wanted to point out that this is their recommendation. It still has to go to GDOT, and GDOT has to approve
Right.
it. And that's where we're kind of hitting a little bit of a roadblock currently. They're still reviewing it and are having a little bit of heartburn with what we're proposing. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware before we said that's what we're moving forward with, that was made clear.
Okay.
Is this the project, is what you just described, the thing that GDOT says we can't have because there's only 19 people a day illegally crossing the road?
They didn't say we can't have it. They're a little concerned and they want to discuss it. So there's some more coordination to be done. Still in
Okay.
process on that.
So is there something that GDOT would just say yes to without discussion to make it safer for these people to cross the road? Or is this is the thing that's recommended as the best solution, so now we're going to try to persuade GDOT to use their thinking caps?
I guess what you're asking is if we were to say, can we just put crosswalk there, will they be okay with that?
Like some other option, yes.
I mean,
Like, what is the thing about this proposal that GDOT doesn't like?
They always are looking at their standards for review and their counts. And if it doesn't meet the threshold, what they're trying to protect against is everybody in the state of Georgia wanting a pedestrian crosswalk everywhere. And so they are going to look at their minimum standards. What we have in our favor is that in this particular area, we have had pedestrian injuries. We have had pedestrian fatalities. And as a city, we're working towards coming up with a solution. We're just going to have to lobby GDOT to agree with that solution. Is that a fair assessment? And so it may require that beyond the design, we may need to be aggressive with our legislative delegation and others to apply just a little bit of pressure.
And then when 19 pedestrians were counted, was that just one over one day, and that was all we studied, was just that one day? And just to clarify again, because I'm having trouble wrapping. There's a standard for how many people need to be illegally walking across the 4-lane highway with a middle turn lane, and that is 20 an hour.
Based on the length of roadway they have to cross.
All right, well, I'm going to call up some friends, I think.
Mr. Tillin?
I have to believe that there's some subjectivity in how GDOT makes their decisions, that everything is not just black and white. And I hope when it comes to us collectively coming to the negotiation table, that factors like there's a large community that lives north of Riverstone that is probably terrified at that intersection. They can probably get the services, grocery stores, things that they need on the north side of Riverstone because of that terror factor. And so I'm guessing that those folks are just not going to ever cross Riverstone. Why would they cross Riverstone? To go to Ingalls? Probably not. To go to the YMCA? Probably not. So there's probably some subjective factors that I hope GDOT will take into account as they evaluate. 19 people crossing a day just tells me that word has gotten out. You do not want to cross Riverstone because you're going to get run over.
Like I said,
Is that fair?
It's still a work in process.
I understand. This is not an insult or egregious comment. I just think that when it comes to negotiating with GDOT, I think we have to appeal to their better senses, if you will. And I know you guys deal with that all the time. Thank you.
Mr. Waterman?
What's I assume the speed limit is 45? It's 35 miles per hour there? Okay. And so with it being 35 miles per hour, putting a pedestrian crossing light, and what I'm trying to get to is consequences of doing that specifically. So, and maybe I'm just digging too far into this at this point, but the consequence of doing that, would that create accidents elsewhere? So maybe cars, rear-ending each other instead of trying to avoid pedestrians. Maybe, and again, I need to see it. Do we have any other, crossing options?
There is one we did look at was called a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, which is just yellow lights, and it can be activated by a pedestrian also. So across the walkway, when they press that, it'll be just a flash. It really don't stop traffic. It just alerts traffic that the pedestrians are there. Based on the roadway is why we did the pedestrian hybrid beacon. It's a little more prominent for a pedestrian and for the vehicles, for the drivers. It acts more like a traffic signal.
Yeah.
That's the reason we suggested that. And it was suggested as a countermeasure by FHWA. They don't recommend the RRFB, what we call that, this type of roadway. And if you have just 19 a day, it has to be activated by a pedestrian to work. So it's not going to be on that much.
Yeah, so with that was also one point in time, and I don't know the factors as far as if it was raining, was it, close to a holiday weekend, but I would think that to improve that sample size, maybe 2 more days would make sense. It just seems like one day, let's go to option B.
We could get some more counts if the council would like. We can do that. What we did was place cameras.
Mm-hmm.
We started Hospital Drive, pointed that way, and Alaska Street pointed this way, and was able to count the whole corridor. And they're crossing right there about where we proposed the PHB.
Mm-hmm. And where's that?
At Ingalls, at that gas station where the railing goes up.
Right. When you turn left coming out of that Ingalls Drive, when you're coming from Ingalls and turn left, you can't turn into that turning lane and stop. You have to keep going, because if the police are there and you stop, they'll give you a ticket. Guess who got one? I didn't get a ticket, but I got stopped. But I got stopped. So when you turn in that turning lane, you can't stop. So Y'all need to remember that though traffic has to keep flowing that way. So you might want to go up a little bit further.
I do know at least the one fatality was at night. I don't know if the other two,
Right.
the other accidents, if we could look at time of day, if those are also at night, but
I do have that. I have to look it up.
and I know you mentioned how dark it is there where they are crossing. I know that is an issue, and I don't know if in the interim, we all know that that's an issue there now. If we could talk to DOT about just putting additional street lighting in, it would help a lot. And hopefully that wouldn't have to rely on crossing data. But if the other accidents also occurred at night, if we're studying 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., we may want to look more at the evening hours and look at adjusting that time frame, because I think the evening is I think more problematic than daylight due to all those factors, in my opinion. Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm incredibly disappointed that GDOT isn't more supportive of this pedestrian crossing, because, of course, our residents' and visitors' safety is paramount in our mind. But tell me yes or no, and I think no is going to be the answer, but I'm not sure if GDOT would care that one of our goals is to make Canton a pedestrian-friendly city. And in the sustainability aspect of it is to get more cars off of the roads to preserve our planet and make a smaller carbon footprint. And I don't know if GDOT would care about that or not, but if somebody threw that into the conversation.
Thinking, you've got some housing to the east and the west of this location. You also have the housing to the north of Riverstone. So sort of like you build it and they will come kind of thing. It's sort of like you're catering to the pedestrians. You're going to promote more walkability in the city, I think, with pedestrian crossing. So we can bring that up also.
Thank you.
Maybe a letter of support also would work. We do that a lot in our ICE evaluations.
Do you want letters of support from residents or from council?
From the council.
Okay, thank you.
Be happy to do that. Anything else? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You have in your packet the council meeting draft minutes from April 6th. Are there any changes or revisions to those?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There is one item that we need to correct in the minutes. Let me get to it real quick. We had listed on here task order. This is listed under new business item C, which is on page 5. It was listed as task order 2 for the East Main Street pedestrian crossing for Practical Design Partners, and it was listed in the agenda as task order number 2. It should have been listed as task order number 3 for that particular firm. The amount of the task order, the description of the task order, the company we're doing the task order with, all of that is correct. But I would ask that council is okay that we make the change in the minutes to show that that should be task order number 3 as opposed to task order number 2.
Okay. Same agenda item and everything, but just
Correct. It would just be changing the agenda item to say task order 3, and then in the description of the comments, we need to change that to also say task order 3.
okay. I'm assuming council is okay with that.
Recommendation to approve the minutes as amended by Mr. Peppers.
Second.
So we have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members have voted to approve. We have 2 informational items this evening. This is for your information only. No discussion. Information by staff. Beginning with item A, information only, presentation of a staff report, cases ANNX 2303-002 and RZON 2303-001, annexation and rezoning request for 1.42 acres to be zoned commercial for a proposed convenience store with fuel pumps located at Hurd Road and Fate Con Road. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you stated, this is an informational item only. This applicant will come before this body on May the 4th for their public hearing. Surprisingly, I've not heard or received any comments in regards to this from the neighboring subdivision. However, the closer that we get to May 4th, I would expect to have some more input from the Park Village residents. And of course, those will be included in your updated staff report. Yesterday, I also received the community information meeting report from the applicant's attorneys, and that will also be included in the staff report. So we look forward to that next month.
Okay, so May 4th, a public hearing on those cases. Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. And then item B, water pollution control plant project update. Mr. Hatabian.
Thank you. Well, it's been about 2 years since we started, and I was asked to present an update of where we're at today. So we'll go through it. I'll try to go through it pretty quickly. I could have gone on for more, but I cut it back.
Okay.
Okay, so we started, this is kind of a picture of the existing plant when we started back in 2021, I believe. To give you a perspective. So we awarded this to Clark Reeves Young in December 2020. Atkins is our construction manager. We did have a groundbreaking in March with a bid price of $63.8 million. That translates to about a little over $10.60 a gallon. Keep that in mind. And we've done a couple of change orders already. One of them was to increase, well, they're both associated with increasing from 6 million gallons a day to 7 million gallons a day. 1.7 from Clark Reeves Young, and then we also had some additional electrical issues we had to deal with. So it was a little over $2 million in the change for 1 million gallons of capacity, which is $2 a gallon compared to the 10 that we bid it at. And just for reference, today those prices are going around $25 a gallon for new construction. So during this whole process, the contractor has proposed several value engineering options to kind of reduce the costs and maybe reduce schedule. They have proposed 10 VE changes. We've accepted 9 of them for a little over $450,000. And also during the construction, we've come up with 67 different work change directives. Some of them have been credits, some of them have been adders, and we've used our allowance items and some of these VE cost savings to pay for those. So we're kind of rocking along pretty good right now. But we do have some future change orders coming. This first one is to make use of our reuse water to use in the solids handling facility. There's no reason that we have to use potable water in that facility. So that's in the works. I think it's just about done. Right now, it's an estimated cost of $330,000. Atkins did an analysis when we first looked at it. It was about a 2-year payback on using potable water. So that one is pretty good. During some of the shop drawing reviews on these gantry cranes, we needed some clearances and some other modifications for transferring some of these membranes. $103,000. One of the items that came across during the reviews was the covers over the membranes. The plan during design would have worked had we not used precast panels. So now we have to go back and put some angles and supports for these covers and attach them to these precast panels, and that's $75,000 or so. And we have some more electrical change orders, the upsizing wire and conduit and lengths in the dewatering building for another $133,000. So, and then we've got one more coming, but we're not going to look at this until the phase one startup is done and the plant's commissioned. This has to do with delays in startup of phase one, which delayed phases 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we'll look at that once we get started in the, or finished with phase one. So that's just kind of a summary of the change orders that will be coming. In our schedule, like I say, we started in February of 21. We're looking at a phase one completion, hopefully November of this year, that's estimated. That's all subject to receiving our motor control centers that have been delayed for a while. We were supposed to get them this month. They're now being told we're going to be here July 1st. Once we get them, we'll go installation, startup, commissioning, and I'm figuring that's going to be about a 4-month process. So that puts us into November. Right now, the substantial completion is in July 24, and the final is in September 24. Again, subject to change based on what happens after we get started. And so now I can go through it a lot quicker with pictures. And if anyone has any questions while I go through, just feel free to jump in. So again, this was a shot from where we started. This was taken last week, kind of in the same angle. You can see all the progress that's made. It's kind of another shot looking at the B&R facility. This chemical storage, and then storage building, fine screening facility. So we'll go. That was pretty much overview of the site. Membranes. This is the first project, the first structure that we started building. If you remember, we had clearing the slab, putting these panels in, and that is the membrane facility. If you look at the dates on the pictures, that was 6 days after they started putting those panels in. So they still had work to do, but it was pretty incredible. Give you an idea, this is the lower level pipe gallery when we started, and now we've got a lot more pipes in there. Upper level pump room, and give you an idea of what's going on in there now. Everything gets pretty crowded. This was setting those gantry cranes, and gives you an idea of those 4 channels. Those are the membrane channels where the cranes are. That building underneath there is where the blowers, the pumps, and piping is. That structure up to the right in the middle is a sludge splitter box, and the nutrient removal facility is up there on the right. Oh, there we are. So that was pouring the slabs for that facility back in October 21. Setting these panels, kind of an intermediate shot of where we are. Again, this was taken, I think, last week. Just to kind of give you an idea of the complexity of everything's going on out here. This one was kind of a cool shot. All those are our electrical conduits for our controls and power and SCADA and everything else. It's amazing the amount of wire that's here. And just another shot looking down into the basins. These are the blowers for that facility. The 2 larger ones on the left are 400 horsepower. The others are 350. And we'll go down to the disinfection facility. So here's, initially we had to install shoring to keep everything in place. That's the existing facility in the back. Pouring that slab, and that was almost done. This is kind of where we're at now with that facility. And the administration building, this is the slab for the admin building. putting the roof deck on, putting some of the brick on. That's kind of where we're at now from the exterior, and installing cabinets in the lab. And that one is coming along pretty good. I mean, they've done finished painting in there now, and I know a lot of the desks and accessories have been ordered, and they should be here soon. So that's the quick and dirty update on it. If anyone has any questions.
So we're running about, I think from what we were talking before, it's around 6 months behind where we were before.
Yeah, my gut feeling is I'm going to say it'll be done first quarter of 25, maybe.
Okay.
There are a couple things in the works, but we won't know the effect on until we can get into the second phase, which is looking at some of the existing tankage and if we can make use out of reusing them as opposed to putting in new. So that could be a huge cost and schedule saver. We won't know that until we get started on the next phase.
Well, on a project of this magnitude, I mean, we don't talk about this project enough. And I mean, we talk about all the trails and art and housing and all the other things we're doing, which is all very exciting, but we couldn't do any of those things if we can't treat our sewage. So it's very impressive, and it's exciting to kind of see it all coming together. So good work on everything. So any questions for Mr. Tabian?
I have one question, Mayor. Dave, you mentioned a couple of milestones. One is substantially complete, and then final. What happens? But what
happens is when when they say they're substantially complete, we'll go do a walkthrough and create a punch list and go through that in fine detail, and then usually that period between the punch list, they'll take care of all that, and then we'll walk through again when they said they're done and sign off on it and cut the ribbon, I guess.
Okay. And then are there post-completion punch lists that can still?
There's a lot. Well, most everything has got at least a 12-month warranty. I know some of the equipment has got 2 years, some has 5 years. We've had a couple of issues on some of the equipment that it looked like it was a little bit damaged, or there was one of the HVAC units. So what we did is we made sure with the vendor that it's still functioning, and we asked for an extended warranty on it. So we got up to like a 10-year warranty on that HVAC unit. So other than that, was going to have to wait for another one to go up, and who knows how long that would have been. So we took some credit, and we took another 5-year warranty. So
thank you.
Ms. McGrew.
Thank you. Mr. Hatabian, the last time you gave us a report on capacity, we had a really nice margin to our maximum capacity. Where do we stand now?
Oh, we're fat, dumb, and happy now.
Okay.
For 2023, we're averaging 2.6.
Okay. And have you issued any letters of approval for for developments?
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember if any new ones came in, but we don't have any issues. Like I say, in February of I think is when we hit our high point of like 3.6, 3.7. But it has dropped off considerably since then. The only reason that we can figure is it's pretty much when everything was opened up and people went back to work. But yeah, we were down 1 million gallons a day.
Thank you.
Mr. Waterman?
You had a slide up there that had a list of costs. I think maybe the total was about $600,000.
The change order, yeah.
The change order. Does that include the value, the cost savings?
No, we keep the we have cost savings, and we have, I don't know how much we have left in allowance items that we use to cover all these other incidental changes that keep coming up. Like I say, we had 67 of these. Some of them are pluses, some of them minuses. And we kind of run off that surplus to pay to cover those, so we don't have to deal with change orders.
Okay, so then the way I should look at it then is we have, was it $450,000 in?
Yeah, 450 in
value engineering savings.
Value engineering,
in
but then
VE.
650.
And then I think we may have, between the VE and allowance items, we may have about $1 million or so left in, funds to take care of some of these things, so.
Hold it steady there, Dave. Well, I think, even 600,000 on a $65 million project is
yeah,
we're doing pretty
when you're
well, so.
actually out there and you see everything that goes on, it's amazing, the magnitude and complexity of it. You're not going to get it perfect in design. You're not going to get it perfect when you bid it, and it's inevitable. And you try to account for it as best you can. But
yeah, in this climate especially, and I think to see the photos of where we started and in that plant and see the technology and innovation in our new plant is pretty incredible. So kudos. So, thank you for the update.
okay, sure.
Mayor, I was just
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson. Sorry.
Since I made a smart alecky remark last time about change orders, I just want to compliment you and Clark and Young and
Clark Reeves Young?
company, yeah. Because we started at almost 63 million, and we're now at 66, and the change orders that you went through tonight seem very legitimate. So with a project of this amount, that seems very reasonable to me. And so I just wanted to say, since I had made not a nice comment before, that this, to me, this is what we don't mind these.
Yeah, this is what we're dealing with, and it's construction things.
Right.
I'm a little leery of what's going to happen once we get into the excavating and getting into the existing plant, because.
And I'm sure the others were legitimate, but these, as you explained them, seem very legitimate. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Do you have any announcements this evening? Okay. 10-minute public input. We have 10 minutes of public input total for everyone who signed up, and we have 2 citizens signed up this evening. We'll begin with Mrs. Maggie Zwetler. Sorry. Too hot. My mouth is not working correctly. So, welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We are happy to be here this evening, and I will be telling you a little bit about our organization, which is Be Smart for Kids. And this is one of our lovely volunteers. She's going to be my sign holder for this evening, and I will be brief. But I wanted to let you know, first off, we will be discussing gun violence prevention. And there may be some people sitting on the stage or in the audience who have experienced gun violence. If I say anything that makes you anxious, please feel free to step away. I always want to let people know that. So, I became involved in the gun violence prevention movement after the slaughter at Parkland High School 5 years ago. And the reason that I got involved, particularly in Be Smart for Kids, is because it's educational and it gives hope for change. And I'm a retired teacher, so the educational component, figured in that. But the intention of Be Smart for Kids, we've been around since 2015. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. And it was created by Everytown for Gun Safety with the intention of reducing gun deaths, injuries, and trauma that occur when children get access to unsecured firearms. So when we do our Be Smart for Kids work, we keep it strictly non-political. We are, as I said, a 501c3. So we seek to find common ground with all parents, grandparents, caretakers, anyone who will listen to us, because the intent is to keep our kids safe, and that's something we all want. So, why are we involved in this? Why is it necessary? Firearms are now the leading cause of death in children in both Georgia and the United States. It's not true of every state in our country, but sadly it is true of us here in Georgia. So, gun sales also increased during the pandemic, as I'm sure you're all aware, so that has added to our issue. Every year, hundreds of American children get a hold of an unsecured firearm, and the consequences are unintentional shootings, and I know you've all seen these in the paper, where a child finds a firearm, thinks it's a toy, ends up injuring or killing a playmate or themselves. And also, in addition, we lose almost 700 children in our country each year to gun suicide. And that is a growing problem. And as I'm sure you're all aware, that has been an issue in Cherokee County. We've lost several kids who used unsecured firearms. And last of all, everyone's concerned about incidents of gunfire on school grounds or the possibility of that. And we know that 3/4 of the incidents of those, the gun is brought by a student or former student from their home. So, what can we do? I said this is a hopeful program. There's things we can do to reduce this issue. We can be smart, and our acronym spells out what we encourage people to do. Secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. And when we talk about securing guns, we let them know specifically what that means. It's not putting a gun on a high shelf. It is having it locked. Model responsible behavior around guns. We believe it's always the adult's responsibility, not the child, to step away from a gun. It's the adult's responsibility to prevent it from happening. Ask about the presence of unsecured guns in other homes. This is the one thing that many people are surprised about when we talk to them, especially people who are not gun owners. It doesn't occur. And I have to be honest and say, I never asked that question either when my children were growing up, but we need to. And I always tell people, you can blame it on your pediatrician. Just like you ask about allergies, pets, ask about the presence of firearms. And if you're a firearm owner, say that up front. Let people know how you secure your firearms. Recognize the role of guns in suicide. And because there's an increasing use of firearms in suicides, it's now attributable to 31% of child suicides. And sadly, 90% of suicides involving a gun are fatal. That's not true of any other method used. It's very hard to know when teenagers are in trouble. It's hard for parents to know if their child is depressed. A lot of times a depressed teenager isn't that different from a normal teenager. Yes, you all know if you've had teenagers in your home. And in addition to that, kids can be very impulsive. A bad day at school, break up with a girlfriend is traumatic, and they can make an impulsive decision that can't be reversed. CDC tells us that 20% of high school students have seriously considered suicide within the last year. So, last of all, we have T, and this is what we encourage all to do. Tell your peers to be smart. And I'd like to challenge all of you here today, in the audience and on stage, see if you can think of 3 people in your life that may need to hear this message. And if so, please share it with them. Last of all, and I'm trying to talk fast, how can we help you here in Cherokee County? We have a 20-minute presentation followed by a Q&A session that we're happy to deliver to any and all groups, and we have that available. We also do a lot of community tabling, as I mentioned. will be over here at the Y, the end of the month, at their Healthy Kids Day. We've done several events with Cherokee Parks and Rec. They've been wonderful having us and inviting us. So we're glad to do that, and we're glad to partner with anyone in our community and help keep our kids safe. So thank you so much for your time, and I brought some goodies. I'm going to leave these here for you all, and if you would like to pick one up, and I have a few extras, please feel free to take them. My business card is on the back, and I don't know if I introduced Colleen. She's one of our wonderful volunteers. We have several in Cherokee County. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Settler. Mr. Thomas Weaver?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Thomas Weaver. I reside at 131 Old Marietta Road here in Later this evening, council is slated to consider item 10G of our old business there on the agenda in regards to authorizing the city manager to pursue a memorandum of understanding with the Cherokee County government for waiving the deed restriction in return to gaining acquisition of the 8 Glenwood property. When I was a child, many years ago, many moons ago, gosh, yeah, it's been that long. Anyway, there was a gymnasium there that I used to play in at the time, and that gymnasium on that property would be a treasure for us to have, if it's possible for us to have it. And I know that we haven't gained that property yet. There's dialogue that has to be discussed between our city manager and the county manager should council choose to authorize that action. I don't know how council feels about that, but I would ask that if council were to choose to move forward in granting the authorization for the city manager to pursue the memorandum of understanding with the county, I would ask that if the city, should it be in the cards, gains that property, that the city seriously consider the possibility of maintaining that gymnasium. And I say that not only because of a sentimental value in my mind from all those years ago, but also because of the fact that Ball Ground has their own gymnasium. The Cherokee County Parks and Recreation Authority has the Hickory Flat Gymnasium that they lease from the district. We had our own gymnasium, but the G. Cecil Pruitt Community Center is under an estate for years 50-year lease to the YMCA through our DDA. So it's still our building, right? But it's not run by us. It's run through them. So I just think it would be great if it would be possible. And I don't make decisions here, but if we could have our own gymnasium, and that would just be, I just think that would be cool, especially because of how historic the building is. I know it's a lot to ask in one bite, but I just wanted to share that with council.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. We have several items on tonight's consent agenda. As per usual, I will read these items, and if anyone would like any of these items removed for further discussion, we can do that. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the entire consent agenda. Item A, approval of Vector Solutions Field Training Program software. Item B, approval to enter into a task order agreement contract with Keck and Wood. Item C, approval of proposed list of assets to be disposed. And item D, approval of memorandum of understanding with Cherokee Board of Commissioners for permitting inspections of county-owned facilities within the city of Canton. All these items were discussed in detail at the last meeting. Anyone like those items to be removed for further discussion, or do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members vote for the motion. We will move into old business now. Item A, discussion and possible action on cases ANNX 2302-004 and RZ0N 2302-001. Request to annex 3.53 acres between Bluffs Parkway and I-575 and rezone the property to general commercial for the operation of an indoor recreation facility. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This public hearing, or the public hearing for this matter, was held earlier this month. I have received no comments or questions, concerns from any of the neighboring residences or property owners. The staff recommends approval of these two requests for several reasons. One being that it will help to reduce an existing unincorporated island within the city. If this is approved, this may also free up the building where Fury is currently located for another use that might be a little bit more desirable for the downtown area. We do have two recommended conditions. If it is approved, that there shall be no signage permitted along the common property line with the right-of-way of I-575, and that the Georgia Native Plant Society shall have access to the property to search for and remove any endangered species that might be found.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. And I believe as we discussed the last meeting, the public hearing, that the applicant is aware and would be responsible of their need to install access at roadways and also sewer lines to the.
Yes, sir. There will be some, I would say, major expense to run the sewer and the water lines to this property, but then again, that is a burden of the developer and/or owner.
Correct. Okay. Any questions from Mr. Green?
Mayor,
Ms. McGrew?
I have a motion, please.
Yes.
It's my motion to annex the 3.53 acres between Bluffs Parkway and I-575 and to rezone the property to general commercial with the conditions that Mr. Green stated.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you very much.
Item B, discussion and possible action on the proposed Central Canton Urban Redevelopment Plan. Mr. Patton, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This was discussed at a meeting earlier this month in regards to an update to the Central City Urban Redevelopment Plan that was adopted in 2014. This does expand the boundary area. The city is aware of additional target areas, if you will, that do have blight, that could have some urban redevelopment. Staff does recommend approval of adoption. There is a resolution that is with the package. Staff does recommend approval with the three suggested amendments that I discussed at the last meeting. Those being add a item, spur the renovation or replacement of blighted housing within the plan area to provide well-located homes proximate to employment and shopping opportunities for a range of income levels. On the capital investments table, amend the column showed as estimated completion 2 years of planned investment, and remove the distance notations in regards to the Oakside properties, the housing authority sites.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patton. Are there any questions for Mr. Patton? Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Tolan?
Mr. Patton, I guess before I make the motion, the three amendments that you just went over, are those in the latest iteration?
No.
Okay, so the motion will be to approve the proposed Central Canton Urban Redevelopment Plan with the amendments that Mr. Patton just noted.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Item C was pulled from the agenda for future discussion. So we'll move to item D, discussion and possible action to amend the Downtown Development Authority's geographical service area. Mr. Ingram?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. At the April 6th meeting, if you recall, we talked about the DDA changing its service area to match that of the tax allocation district. At that time, it was brought to our attention that in the original documents establishing the DDA, the central business district, that verbiage was used to establish that area, and that somewhat conflicted with the use of central business district in our zoning ordinance. So we appreciate Mr. Dyer. He's worked and tried to prepare a resolution that would mitigate some of the issues in the use of that word, and you have a copy of that before you tonight. So the DD has approved and recommended council consider taking action on this item, and we'd ask you to approve that if possible tonight.
Correct. Thank you. I think this is exciting development. We do want to have the DDA's boundary match that the TAD, expand the footprint of downtown. So I think it's great for all the reasons we discussed at the last meeting and others. Any additional questions or discussion? Ms. Schmidt?
I was just going to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the resolution to amend the DDA's geographical service area to match the city's tax allocation district number 1.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Item E, discussion of an energy services contract with Schneider Electric Buildings Americas. Mr. Ingram?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We promise you we didn't turn the heat up or the air conditioner down to facilitate this discussion, but it's a long discussion. We've been discussing it for a while now. The need to replace our HVAC systems in the public safety building as well as here at City Hall. Those systems are beyond what many would consider their useful age. You have in front of you a contract I sent to you earlier this week, a copy of the contract, a copy of the agreement with Schneider, as well as their presentation. We have Jen Miller and Kevin May that are here with us tonight from Schneider. They want to present this project to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. Stop us during the presentation. We will not be asking for action tonight. We're going to be asking for action at May 4th. And we understanding that this is such a complex issue, and it's not just the HVAC projects, but there's some other very beneficial projects in the overall project. So we're offering up that if council is amenable to it, we could give another meeting and let y'all have a one-on-one meeting with Schneider, with city management, so that we can answer any questions you have and make you more comfortable in your decision with this project. So at this time, if it's okay with the council, I'll ask the Schneider team, Ms. Jen Miller and Mr. Kevin May, to come up and present.
Ms. Miller, Mr. May, good to see you again.
Good to see you guys. I'm not going to make Kevin stand up here until the end when we're kind of addressing questions, but it's great to be here again tonight. This has been a long time coming. And we are just really excited to share this overview of the final project. And just like Nathan said, if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer those, but also any one-on-ones. We, just want to make sure that you guys feel really comfortable with everything that we are proposing. So I think even though we've been working on this project for 2 years now, just about every meeting I even have with staff, we kind of review these program goals at the beginning of every meeting we have, because it's easy to get weighed down in the technical aspects of these projects, but our goals are really to address these higher level goals for the city. So just as a reminder, one of those is really future-proofing these historic facilities you've chosen to set up your city operations in, while also promoting sustainability and really maximizing the city's financial investment here. So we feel really good about how this project has come together. I think we're addressing these goals, and we're going to provide detail around all of this. But to give you the big picture overview of what this project actually contains. Like Nathan said, there is heavy HVAC renovations that are a part of this, but really it's kind of all of the critical needs within City Hall and public safety, handling both of those renovations while also expanding the city's solar footprint. We have some ideas to bring City Hall onto even more of a solar-powered footprint here, but also providing some public-facing educational opportunities throughout your parks. And then the last area is some additional opportunities to really just drive efficiency and really streamline operations throughout the city. So before we go through some of the details, which we'll try to be as brief as possible, this is a complex project, but we did want to just do one refresher on kind of what the delivery model is that we're operating under here. Your council packets should have had a more detailed version of this kind of spectrum. But the big picture is that there are a whole variety of delivery models available to cities, for public sector construction projects. And each one of those has their place for different types of projects depending on what that project is, addressing and what the outcomes you're looking to achieve are. The city chose the model that we operate under is that green box on the far right. And the city chose to, approach this project from this model because, one, these were complex renovations and historic existing facilities, and they knew that performance was really important. So kind of the bottom line is that this delivery model, the performance contract, really combines some of the benefits of these other models, like the guaranteed maximum price of a CM at risk, which I know that y'all have used that model in the past. I think at the Jones Building, is that correct, Mr. Peppers? And then also the single point of accountability of design build. But on top of that, we are responsible for the performance of these systems we're putting in for up to 20 years. So because of that, we operate under specific legislation that allows us to really customize the way that we can procure vendors and subcontractors that prioritize quality and make sure that these systems are going to work for the next 20 years. So just wanted to give you all a refresher on that delivery model. And now we'll kind of run through the scope of this project. So City Hall, this was really a priority because as we can tell today, you're kind of running on borrowed time here. We have been working with Brandon to try to identify opportunities to patch things along, but it's time. It's time to upgrade these systems and get them replaced. So the key benefits of the new system we're coming in will be more individual control, so staff will be more comfortable in their individual spaces, and it will also be much more energy efficient. Currently, these giant rooftop units have to ramp up to 100%, even if they just need to move one room 1 degree. So these new systems will be, they're called variable air volume because they do vary based on the load that they're trying to serve. So that's the extent of the technical insight I'll give you guys there. On top of that, we're doing some major work on the roof with these new units going on there. The roof is also at the end of its useful life. So it really makes sense to do all of this in tandem when we're already going to be working up there. So that new roof will have a 20-year warranty. It's a cool roof, which checks a box for the ARC certification. So it's really making this building even more efficient. Then in public safety, that's a priority because that's really where your where your operations team is spending the majority of their time. I mean, multiple times a week, if not every day. Systems break, the pipes are leaking and causing damage. So what we're going to there is a different system. It's a variable refrigerant flow system, which is ultra efficient, and for one, this will be a pretty complex installation process because you cannot close down your public safety complex. You have court functions, you have officers that need to be there, so we will work floor by floor, starting from the 3rd floor and working our way down, and doing the work to put in the new system and not change it over until that new system is fully in place. So it will be a complex project that's going to require coordination. We have a plan in place to do that, to minimize disruption as much as possible. And then also, the best part about the technical aspect of this is that it's going to provide 53 individual zones. That means all of those individual office spaces where you have one space where an admin person is, working their day job, and you have an officer coming in a full vest, full uniform. They don't need their spaces the same temperature. So there'll be really individualized control and comfort. So moving on to some of those other areas, we're looking at really expanding your solar footprint here with replacing the roof. It made a whole lot of sense, once we checked and made sure structurally it was sound and feasible. It would make a whole lot of sense to cover it with solar and really expand your footprint here without, compromising the historic integrity of the building. So once this is complete, combined with your parking deck solar, the building on some days will be entirely powered by solar energy, which is really exciting here in Canton. And with that, and I know that Mr. Ingram is very familiar when he was investigating the parking deck solar, but you have to be very strategic in how you size certain solar to make sure that you're not oversizing. You don't want to be producing more and just wasting, space and money. So our energy engineers modeled what that would look like from your current solar you're producing with this new solar to make sure you're really getting the best balance there. And then on top of this, the panels we're putting in have technology that will link up to a real-time monitoring platform. And we have some ideas about how we can help share that with the community that we'll talk about at the end. But this really gives true visibility, and it's real-time data on what these panels are producing. And then the last piece of solar, like I said, the solar on the rooftop is not necessarily visible to the community, but this demonstration solar really provides function and education to your community. So each of these installations will have phone chargers. They are all ADA accessible, and just provide everything from the solar lift tree providing a sculptural architectural element to the Haven solar covered picnic table that provide a nice place for parents to sit under shade while they're watching their kids play. And the exact locations of these, I know that the Heritage Park has still been under construction with the new playground, so we'll figure out exactly where this makes the most sense based on kind of the final product. So the next two slides I'll touch on very quickly. These were really around operational efficiency. We'll be gathering all of the street lighting data for your city staff to know exactly what city streetlights are owned by the city. It will be captured in your GIS system. And then we also found an opportunity to drive savings through looking at your IT expenses. We're still working through the final details with Mike in the IT department. We believe that this is going to save us a significant amount of money while still maintaining all the functionality that you currently have with your systems. And so now moving on to the services side of things. I'll be very brief on this, but this is actually one of the most important aspects of our projects. The client services team is really the team responsible for making sure things are performing for that 20-year period. They provide all of the support from initial training to monitoring the savings that we projected to helping troubleshoot any issues y'all might have. So they are really a huge value to your operations team that runs pretty lean, but hopefully we can help them be even more effective. And then on the sustainability side, we know that the city has done a lot already, and we have a full, division that focuses on sustainability consulting. But we worked really hard to figure out, okay, where do you actually need our support? You've already done a lot. And the two key areas that we're going to help support are, one, continuing to help support the ARC certification. A lot of these things in this project will naturally check boxes for that, so we'll continue to support there. And then we'll also be helping the city create a Canton-specific sustainability plan that you can share out with the public and really set a strategic plan for the next 4 or 5 years moving forward on your sustainability goals specifically. We've also developed a marketing plan. This is something we want to share, this amazing story, and we know that you want to share the impact you're having with your community. So we've worked with Lauren to develop a communication plan. And then this final aspect is something that really came to shape pretty recently, right before our final design meeting with staff. Kelly and I were actually talking about the ARC certification and how almost every aspect of that requires some sort of educational material that you're providing. And we talked about how I don't think it's the look Canton's going for a hotel brochure stand sitting in City Hall full of paper. Not necessarily sustainable and not the most modern approach. And so it reminded me of some work we did with Gulf Shores City Schools. And this was just one of 8 or 10 educational displays we did throughout their campuses. But the idea is that we would do an interactive display here in City Hall that captures everything from that real-time solar production data to the sustainability metrics that you've achieved. And then additionally, it would capture those community resources, all the things with the ARC certification you're required, plus anything else that Canton just wants to educate the community on. So we are working to develop exactly what makes the most sense here, and we'll have that by the May 4th meeting. It could look something like what we did at Gulf Shores. Could also look something more like a corporate lobby kiosk. We're figuring out the details, and we will definitely welcome any input. But we also look to maybe accompany that with a native plant display. This is something we did at Gulf Shores, where we displayed all of their different ecosystems throughout that they have in that community. And here we would potentially, highlight all the native plants. We know that is important here, educating the community that you don't want invasive species. So these are really high-quality museum quality placards that would be on display here in City Hall. And we even talked about potentially involving local artists to help design them. All of this is workshopping, but in general, this is kind of the concept, and we think that this would really help communicate the impact that this whole program is really having for the city. So very quickly, the overall financial impact by looking at your baseline of utility and telecom expenditures. This does not include your water, wastewater expense or your street lights. This is just the buildings that we're impacting here. We believe we could bring that down by almost 50%, which would result in $123,000 a year in savings. Over the course of 20 years, that would be just over $3 million that the city would have spent on utilities and telecom that we're decreasing. And when you look at the overall financial picture of just over $10.5 million, we found an additional $220,000 in rebates and the new tax incentive program for renewable energy. Your net investment is about $7.3 million when you're looking at this as a long-term partnership. So that is really the overview of this many months, many years long journey that we have gotten to today. We are currently in progress with the contract review. This slide also outlines the construction phasing plan. But yeah, we welcome any feedback. Kevin, if you want to come up here, we are just really happy to be working with you here in Canton.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and by your team and also by our staff. I understand Billy and Nathan spent a lot of time with your team, and I understand the complete presentation of the data and all is 3 hours plus, and I know we kept you to a short timeline tonight, and thank goodness with the temperature in here tonight. But we all understand the need, but we appreciate also the offer to maybe some individual or group work session with us to fully understand this, because it all makes sense on many levels, and also how the many tenets of our roadmap that it touches. But it's going to be our jobs to communicate why we're doing this and how we're doing it to our citizens. And so I think it's a lot to consider. And I know for myself, we'd appreciate that time between this meeting and the next meeting to determine with our city manager what's the best way for us to get up to speed on as many of the details as possible and ask these questions so we can delve in this information on our own and discuss how we want to proceed between this meeting and the next meeting to understand this better. We discussed about possibly, developing a Q&A or an executive summary of these things again, so we're all communicating clearly, correctly. I know Mr. Waterman probably understands a lot of these things, but for the rest of us, we have some education that needs to happen. So I think with that, are there any immediate questions tonight, or we want to hold these and delve into these in these work sessions, individual work sessions? I want to go there.
Save the nerd questions for later.
Okay. I know we're going to have questions, and there'll be questions, but.
So, Mayor, will it be on the agenda for the next council?
Yes. So between now and the next meeting, we'll look and see how we want to address our questions and get really up to speed on all this information on this complex project. But it's exciting and a little overwhelming in many ways, but we appreciate all the work and the presentation this evening, and thank you for keeping it concise. And
I tried my best.
You did well. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you. We'll move along to item F, discussion and possible action on abandonment of Hospital Drive. Mr. Peppers.
Good evening. We mentioned at the last meeting about the abandonment of Hospital Drive. This connects Medical Lane and Hospital Road through a development project that was approved by council. And one of the conditions of that particular development was that we would abandon this roadway. The developer would build a Mary Lane extension, which connects Mary Lane from Medical Lane and Hospital Road as part of that development. The request to council would be to abandon the roadway and dedicate that quitclaim deed that land to the property owner, and that would fulfill one of their obligations under their conditions required for the land disturbance permit.
Okay. Any questions or comments on?
And like I said, I would make one note. Typically, when we have abandoned right-of-way, we have looked for some value to be recouped from that land when we dedicate it over. In this particular case, where we're abandoning a roadway, but they're constructing a new roadway that will be more improved for that area, staff is not recommending any compensation for that exchange of land.
So the compensation would come in the form of the new roadway they're constructed.
Correct.
That will be public roadway.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
I make a motion that we abandon Hospital Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion.
I'm sorry. As I was preparing the paperwork, we often forget that Hospital Road, also a drive, there's
Right.
two, so we're abandoning Hospital Drive.
It's Hospital Drive.
Right.
And it will connect in with Mary Lane as that abandonment comes through in the.
No, Mary Lane's will just be a different road, but
and
it's Hospital Drive between Hospital Road and Medical Lane.
It's Hospital Drive. Excuse me. Abandonment of Hospital Drive.
If I may also ask Mr. Dyer, does the motion also need to include that we're quitclaiming the right-of-way to the adjacent property?
Yeah, to authorize the mayor to sign the quitclaim deed.
So do we want to rescind that vote?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's, what's the word? Reopen the discussion of that.
Okay,
So have a motion to reopen it, reconsider, I guess is what we would call it.
Motion to reconsider.
Second.
A motion to reconsider in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, let's
So
reconsider.
now we need the motion to abandon Hospital Drive, and the right-of-way will be to the property.
Correct. Authorize the mayor to sign the quitclaim deed.
And for the mayor to sign a quitclaim deed.
Second.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members vote for the motion. Thank you. Item G, discussion and possible action on the memorandum of understanding with the Cherokee County Manager on the negotiation of real estate known as L.R. Tippins Elementary School Building at 8 Glenwood Street. Mr. Peppers.
Mr. Mayor, this would be an MOU between the city and the county to allow us to negotiate the transaction of us accepting property from the county and them also receiving in return a release of a deed restriction on property that we transferred to them on Bluffs Parkway for a future fire station site. Staff recommends approving the MOU so we can start that process. It doesn't tie the council to making the transaction occur, but it does allow us to negotiate with the county.
So again, this would just be a motion approving you, our city manager, to discuss the possible draft contract agreement with the county.
Correct.
Manager. Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, if I may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Tolan.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed, I'm sorry, wrong motion. Here we go. Motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Cherokee County Manager Jeff Morton related to real estate and allowing the city manager to execute the document.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Is that motion correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Just checking.
Just had to get it right.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members have voted for the motion.
Thank you.
We had item H added, which is discussion and possible action on a settlement agreement that Mr. Dyer is going to explain to us.
Yes, so you may recall in 2019, the city was sued by property owners at Morris Hill Drive and Marietta Highway, the Dowdy, Holly Dowdy and Sonia Dowdy. It was for inverse condemnation based on a repaving where the claim was that we had encroached into their property. So we've discussed some of these terms before, but I'm just going to run them since you didn't have this on the agenda. I'm going to run through the terms. There are not very many. The city has agreed to remove the yellow line that was painted on Morris Hill Drive. I think that's already been done. The city will remove a portion of the white stop bar that was extending into their parking lot. That's been done. We would stripe 4 parking spots 18 feet in length running from the building. That's been done. What we really are accomplishing is drawing and defining the right-of-way. There was a defined right-of-way that was not being used, so now we're defining what was being used before. There was a plat prepared, and so we will quitclaim all the property that now belongs to the property, which is essentially the parking spaces. They will quitclaim everything outside of that, which will now be right-of-way. And in exchange for all of that, then there's their sidewalk and their sign, and one other thing is encroaching in Marietta Highway. We're agreeing that that's okay. They don't have to, we waived any permit requirements, and that we will enter into an encroachment agreement that provides that if we ever need to widen Marietta Highway, we can remove the encroachments. And in exchange for all of that, they will dismiss the lawsuit. So no money going either way. Okay. So tonight would just be a motion to approve that settlement agreement and authorize the mayor to execute it and the quitclaim deed and well, that's all. Just to execute the settlement agreement and related documents.
Discussion or questions for Mr. Dyer? Do I have a motion?
I have a motion if I can repeat after Mr. Dyer, like we're taking an oath. I move to approve the settlement agreement and to authorize the mayor to execute the agreement
And related documents.
and related documents.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All members voted for the motion. Move into new business. We have two items this evening. Item A, discussion of proposed growth boundary agreement. Mr. Green?
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The county has approached the city for an updated growth boundary agreement. I believe this started in the latter part of 2022. The current agreement was signed on August 23rd in 2004, and it did not have an end date. Some members of the county government disputed that. Mr. Patton and myself has long maintained that there is no sunset clause, and there is not one noted. In the proposed agreement, they are looking for an end date of August 23rd, 2054. I believe you have a copy of the existing resolution and the proposed resolution. Also, the county has provided us with a memorandum of understanding. The resolution basically talks about the need for the growth boundary agreement. The memorandum of understanding outlines the procedures that will take place in notifying the city, the county, whenever a rezoning takes place inside the both a growth boundary agreement on the perimeter of the exterior of the agreement. Of course, the city will notify the county of any requested annexations. From the staff standpoint, I don't really see an issue with them. It gives a more clear and concise method of dealing with annexations, both with the county and the city.
Okay. Thank you. And the actual boundary, you said is similar, but there are some differences?
There are a couple of minimal changes in the mapping area. One is going up Ball Ground Highway. It's been extended a little bit. There's some on the west side of town that has been taken out. In my opinion, it's nothing significant.
Okay. And again, I know this does kind of go in the process a little bit, defines the process, which is good. I know we're only discussing this tonight. But again, I think, is the goal to approve this at the next meeting, or just, do we have a time frame here that we're aiming for?
We have not set a time frame yet. There may be some legal issues that Mr. Dyer would want to look at to make sure we're not hog-tying ourselves, so to speak, with some of these agreements.
Okay.
But probably the sooner the better.
Okay. I would just like to, ask council to kind of look at this closer in detail while Mr. Dyer is also reviewing it, and we can discuss as necessary.
I don't anticipate any issues, but we'll certainly be reviewing it.
And I would note that one of the big pushes from the county is that this is a similar document that they have already approved with Woodstock and Holly Springs, and their hope is to get all of the cities under the same document for ease of residence. We just have a magic card in that we already have a document.
Right.
Everybody
Right.
else is expired.
Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Wilson.
who is going to be negotiating on behalf of the city with the growth boundary?
Who would you like to negotiate?
Oh,
on
I figured you need to know where we're thinking about growing, so
Right.
I guess we'll see it before it's a.
But I think the idea was it's the same that we have in place now with just those two minor changes
Yes, sir.
So there won't be much changes.
in the actual area.
Okay.
It's mostly about process. And what it's really doing is a lot of the tension, let's call it,
Right.
comes in timing. Because the county had to react before they had, we had a public hearing scheduled before they could even vote.
Okay.
So we would get this letter and
Yeah.
everybody gets.
Yeah, yeah.
So we slowed it down a little bit to avoid some of that.
Okay.
Right. So the process can definitely be improved, but I would ask council just to kind of look at the boundaries so we all understand it.
Right. So that
Hasn't
we can-
changed that much.
We'll know, yeah.
And again, given the fact that we do have an existing one that has no end date, just to make sure that we're comfortable that we all agree the new one is better than the one we have. So,
I think so, yes.
so, and we can address any questions we have to Mr. Green and Mr. Peppers, Mr. Dyer going forward. So, okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. Then item B, discussion of Canton Green Plan. Ms. Penley, welcome. Thank you for your patience on this warm evening.
No problem. Good evening. I am here today to present the Canton Green Plan. So the Canton Green Plan goes along with our sustainability initiatives, and it also goes along with our ARC Green community certification. Myself and Bethany Watson were working on the checklist for ARC Green communities. And in that checklist, we found 17 items that needed a policy. So that's why we developed the Green Plan, because you guys would really get sick of seeing me. So, so with doing that, we, like I said, it's 17 items. A lot of these items are things that the city just doesn't have a policy for. We do the majority of them. We just don't technically have a policy. It goes from recycling traditional and non-traditional items in-house and in the government facilities and also for the community. We check all those boxes. We already do all of them. It also kind of covers a lights out policy, which, you know, turn your lights out, power down when you leave your offices here in the city. It kind of hits on several different things. No idling. You know, if you have a vehicle, there's some exceptions that go with that, you know, with like emergency services and things like that. But don't sit and let your car idle, you know, your city truck idle for, you know, longer than 5 minutes if can be. So it hits some LED requirements that we have. So basically, if the city decides to build a giant new facility, we agree, if feasible, that we would follow those guidelines and try to get certification for that. So it hits a lot of those items. I can go further into detail if you would like me to, but it kind of encompasses the majority of what we're doing already. This gives us 60 points towards our ARC Green certifications. The minimum for bronze is 175, and we are on track to hit bronze this year. So that's all. Do y'all have any questions, or you want me to go into it further?
No, I appreciate your work and excited to make progress on this initiative. So, questions, comments? Ms. McGrew?
Ms. Penley, what action would you like council to take for the policies? Do you want a committee to work together with you and Ms. Watson, or what do you want us to do?
Basically, we just need the policy to be adopted. We need the Green Plan to be adopted, and that way it will encompass all of these policies. We just have to show, along with other documentation, for each of these items that we have a policy in place, that we're abiding by the policy with the certification. That's pretty much it.
Do you all have policies written up? Do you have templates for these policies?
That's pretty much what this is.
Okay.
I do have a couple other things, like with some of the recycling things, they ask like what we have in place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what non-traditional recycling are we doing in our government facilities? So we just do a little blurb saying these are the things, these are the non-traditional recycling or the traditional recycling. Same thing with the, you know, do we offer the community curbside recycling? Yes, we do offer them that. And then we have a copy of a contract through Waste Pro that everyone is offered those items. So with this plan, we tried to lay it out where it hits all of those items so that we did not have to do a resolution for every single one of those So when we go to submit to ARC, we would take the adopted if y'all decide to adopt this plan, we would take this adopted plan and it would cover those items along with the minutes where it was adopted through City Council.
Is this green plan also recommended by the Board of Sustainability?
Yes, I actually talked to them about it last night. In the future, they are wanting to make a couple amendments to it, further down the road once we kind of get into a couple more things with ARC. But a lot of that will be, actually some of it falls in line with what Schneider will be doing. It will, if that happens, but it kind of falls in line with some of the projects that the city is not currently doing yet, but hopefully we will be by next year when we apply for ARC. So that'll be some of the things that we kind of gear it towards.
Thank you.
And will you be presenting the plan at the next meeting for
No, this is the plan.
Yeah.
What I submitted to you guys. Did y'all all get this? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
yes, this
okay.
is it. I can
Making
go
sure.
further in detail with it if I need to.
no, and we just had on the agenda for just discussion tonight. So I meant next meeting, would you be asking us to approve the plan?
Yes.
Adopt
yes.
the plan. Okay.
Mhm.
That was my question. Sorry. It's getting hot in here. My brain's not working. So, thank
Yes.
you. Any other questions, Ms. Wilson?
I just had a comment. I was looking at the no idling policy.
Mhm.
I think we all could probably learn from this, but I guess everybody's gonna be taught this because, it says you can't have a parked vehicle for more than 30 seconds unless with idling. All of these things will just sort of be an education process. Nobody's gonna be the policeman for that.
Right. Exactly. That's why we decided to do policy instead of ordinances, because we did have the option. And we've discussed this here before with ordinances. I mean, you have to have someone police it and make sure that people are abiding by that ordinance. So that's why we decided to go with policies instead.
Looks good. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Peppers.
Good evening. Just a few items. You have in front of you a copy of our operations report from March. That's also on our website. I'm not going to read through that, but I did want to let you know that it's up there and online as well. Next week is Georgia Cities Week. It is a week where the Georgia Municipal Association and the cities across our state celebrate the fact that we're different than counties. So we're going to enjoy Georgia Cities Week next week. Here's a few things that we have going on. On Monday, the 24th, in this room, we have the Teen Job and Resources Fair from 3 until 6. On Tuesday, we have a town hall meeting at 6 p.m. at the St. Paul AME Church on Chrysler Street. On Wednesday, also in this room, we have an open house to the public from 4 to 7 p.m. The goal with our open house, we have tables that will be set up for each of our tenants of the roadmap, telling what the city's working on, providing opportunities for feedback from the residents and citizens as we're working on things and try to build more community around that plan. We'll also have that on Thursday from 10 to 1 in this room as well. So if those that can't make it at a nighttime hour but can make it during the day or at lunch can attend. Also Thursday night, very exciting, we have the Taste of Canton down at the Mill on Etowah from 4:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. I expect lots of people to be there, and there'll be good food and beverage to go around. Starting on Friday through the weekend, we have the Peaberry Film Festival at the Canton Theater. Tickets are available for that. And then next Saturday, the 29th, we have our Garden in the Park at downtown, which is basically a celebration of our friends in environmental and sustainability efforts, as well as Main Street and vendors, and help you get yourself ready for the spring. I would also note another event that's occurring tomorrow night. That's outside of our Georgia Cities Week. This is occurring down at Reformation, where they're going to have the launch for the Women's Professional Soccer League and the associated beer with that. That's at 6:30 p.m. at Reformation. One item that has come up, and staff really wants some input from council on this, relates to Airbnb. We have received a request from a resident of a single-family home in the neighborhood to be able to operate an Airbnb. And that particular request and what is shown currently online is the rental of the basement space of that home as opposed to renting the whole facility. And staff and city attorney have gone through varied discussions on Airbnb over the last couple of years. As you know, there's been a lot of changes at the state level on that as well. We want to make you aware of what our stance is on this particular issue, and basically offer up to you that if you think we need to have further discussion, or if you would like to bring this back as an agenda item for discussion of the council, we would seek your input if it differs from that staff opinion. So, Mr. Dyer.
So our opinion, and we've batted it around over the last 3 years pretty much, a short-term rental meets the definition of a hotel under the hotel motel tax and our ordinance. So state law and our ordinance. State law hotel motel tax was changed in 2021 to include Airbnb and VRBO kind of rentals as part of the hotel motel tax. So if it's a hotel, it's only allowed where hotels are allowed, and that's not allowed in a residential district. So that's the position that we have maintained for the last few years. I think there was one license, occupational tax license, that was issued prior to our starting discussions, and maybe that had gotten renewed a couple of times. But until we enact something to specifically allow them to exist in residential areas, in my opinion, it's a business, and therefore has to have an occupational tax certificate and has to meet the home occupation rules, which it can't. So.
And so some of the things we look at from the staff perspective is, on the home occupation side, there are rules in our ordinance as it relates to the hours of day that's available to the public, and it's not 24 hours a day. In the case of certain entities, if I'm renting, if I live in a single family home, for example, and I'm using that as an Airbnb, but I'm renting out the whole home, I'm out of town and I'm putting it on the market to rent out, well, there's likely one single family replacing the single family that's there. But now if I have a single family and I'm renting out my basement as an Airbnb, am I really a single family at that point? And so there's kind of issues up there. We've talked a little bit about how accessory dwelling units fit in this. But so far we have not renewed this particular license because we don't feel like it fits within that definition.
And of course, they would be allowed in the central business district because hotels are allowed in that district, in any commercial district. So we're just treating it as a business, essentially. If we wanted to allow it for this use, we would have to amend the home occupation rules to specifically allow this use.
I think there are multiple issues. Number one, I think if someone's operating an Airbnb in a development that's covered by HOA rules that prohibits them, would that supersede?
I guess if the HOA agreed with me that it was business, because most covenants prohibit commercial use.
I mean, another fact is that you can go on Airbnb and search for Canton, Georgia, and it's happening across the city. So would we rather know and document that and know where it is happening and
put some rules on it.
Put some rules on it.
I think that's what a lot of jurisdictions have decided.
So that everyone is, operating under the same rules. And then we also are going to be launching our tourism initiative soon, which I think there'll be more interest and demand for that. And then another factor, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that our housing study mentioned the need for, or mentioned Airbnb and that type of need. I'm just saying all these things, and I agree with your assessment, staff's assessment of that, but I think all these other factors is something that maybe we should sit down and discuss, or maybe have a work session on, and look at all those and how it fits with our roadmap, and kind of go to our roadmap and kind of say, do we need new rules and regulations, or is there something that we need to consider, and look at what other cities have done. And I mean, I know there's been a lot of discussion over the past few years, but just, I mean, ultimately, like we have been making decisions of the past, 3 years, is go back to our roadmap and see what is in the best interest of what works for us in Canton.
What if we did it as a committee, like we did with ordinances and stuff, and then brought something back?
That makes sense to me. Ms. Wilson?
Let me see if I heard you correctly. If a hotel's not allowed, an Airbnb is not allowed. Is that what you said?
Correct, because hotel, the definition under state law is anybody that rents a room or house or any portion of it. And that was what the change in 2021 was, to capture these things. Of course, the state's point was to get tax from them.
So that's the bottom line.
Right.
And our issue is less about, tax is part of it, but our issue is more about the safety of the individual that's leasing. Are you leasing the whole thing? Are you leasing a part of it? What does that look like from a fire code, building code point of view?
But as we move forward with tourism initiatives, it would become, it would also be about, we don't, if we have all these reasons that Canton is a destination, then, and there's more and more people trying to do these kinds of things, then that is what tourism is the hotel motel tax. So
right, and
we
that's
want to
what
be capturing it.
the jurisdictions that have, and Cherokee County passed an ordinance now, and so some cities have looked at, do you want to make it be the whole house or a portion, or is it better just to let it be a portion of the house? And do you have to live in the house while you're doing the Airbnb? And that's probably less of an issue here, but a lot of, like Savannah has put that in there. Other places are just about, let's make sure there's parking, let's make sure they're not parking on the street because there's too many people. There are rules you can put in and say, if you're going to do it, here's what you have to do. It really hadn't been that big of a thing. It comes up once a year, and so we just haven't come and asked what y'all want to do, and it's just never come up. So it's coming up again.
It's coming up again, but I think with our tourism initiative, planning to launch soon, and the other, it's an issue. It's an issue that's not going to go away. It's only become let me think of that. And at the next council meeting, I'll be happy to appoint a council committee to work with staff, and we can go to take the next steps and come back to council and make some recommendations how we proceed. Does that sound good?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Peppers? Thank you. Any council introduced items? Okay. Just have a couple quick things. I did want to encourage our residents to attend the two town hall opportunities to give feedback to our roadmap and some new initiatives that we're looking at, so that we kind of make sure that our roadmap stays on course with our citizens and their plan for the community. So we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. So I do want to encourage everyone to attend those town halls. And just one other thing, I wanted to kind of read a quick letter I received. I think Mr. Hooper may have stepped out, but we'll make sure he gets this. But it's a letter received from Miss Linda Schwamline. It says, "Dear Mr. Mayor and council members, we want to commend the city workers for their work in Bowling Park and Exit 16. We appreciate your attention to these two areas in our town. In Bowling Park, the two washed-out areas were filled in with rocks, which will stop the erosion of the track. Dead trees were cut and removed from the track area. On exit 16, the overgrown forsythia has been leveled, therefore the area is much improved. The workers cleaned the burning bush area, which will allow the red leaves to be enjoyed in the fall. Cutting the pampas grass will allow the new growth to flourish. The mowing and weed eating really enhances the entire exit. Please thank the Street and Parks Department for their attention to these areas in our city. We appreciate their service in maintaining the beauty of our town. So sincerely, Pat Stewart and Linda Schwanline. So thanks to our Public Works crews and Parks crews, Street Department for all their great work. So want to pass along those kudos when we get them. So that is all I have. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss real estate and litigation.
I move to adjourn to executive session to discuss litigation and real estate.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.